LGBTQIA plus community in general.
All right. So let me just start sharing this PowerPoint.
Vamos a empezar a compartir la
Right.
pantalla.
Everybody can see my screen, correct?
Todos pueden ver la
Yeah,
pantalla.
perfect.
Por favor, usen sus deditos
All
para
right.
arriba.
So it's all yours, Joy.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you all for having me here today. I'm really honored to be here with you all.
Gracias. por
So
tenernos
like I
acá
said,
hoy.
I work with positive images, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our services and what we
Vamos
do.
a hablar un
So
poco de
next
los
slide,
servicios
please.
que proveemos.
So we have an LGBTQIA plus community center in
Tenemos
downtown
una
Santa
comunidad
Rosa,
lesbiana, gay,
and we have a lot of
bisexual,
things we do
transexual,
there. We offer
queer,
resources and
intersexual y
referrals.
asexual.
So if
Centro
someone
comunitaria
needs some
con
support, or if they need a
recursos,
referral
donde pueden
to
referir
some
a una
services
persona
that are
por
LGBTQ affirming,
centro
whether
Misgendering,
that's
como también
therapy
una
or doctors or
biblioteca
whatever, we can help with that.
computadores.
We also
Tenemos
have
una
a media
aplicación de
library.
transformación
So
y tenemos
it's
espacio para
mostly
que la
books,
comunidad se
but
pueda
we
reunir.
also have some other movies and DVDs that people
Bien.
can check out. And
Tiene
it's
películas
mostly
y
stuff
DVDs
pertaining to
de
the
LGBTQ,
LGBTQ community, but not exclusively.
pero no solamente
We also have
para
computers. So if people need to
tenemos
work on
computadores,
homework,
si
they need to
necesitan
work on a
tareas,
job application, anything
quieren
like
llenar una
that,
aplicación
they
para
can come
trabajo,
into our space and have a safe
pueden
place
siempre venir al
to do that for
espacio
free.
de
We also
positivas
have a
positivas
transformation station,
y
and this is a
llegar.
clothing
También
closet
tenemos una sección de
that people can take
es un
clothes
closet
from for free.
completo.
So
que
this
pueden
is
venir
mostly
y
to
adoptar
support people if they are
porque
exploring their gender or the way they express
especialmente
themselves.
para la gente que no tiene un
But
presupuesto, pero
it's really
quieren
for anyone.
explorar
We know that a
su
lot of people
identidad
in our
sexual
community are
desde
struggling
adentro.
with homelessness or
Y
poverty,
para gente
and
que,
we want these
que
clothes to be
está en
free as a
pobreza o
resource
que
to
están
anyone who needs it.
sin hogar, para
And
que
then we
puedan
also just have a
tener.
community meeting space.
También
So
tenemos un espacio
we let
comunitario
other groups
para
use our
reunirse
community center free of charge,
y todo se puede
so that we can
utilizar
support
y
other
gratis,
groups in our
libremente.
community as well. One of the main things we do is a youth support group, and this is for ages 12 to 18, and it's mostly attended by ages 12 to 16. And we do a lot of different stuff in this support group. We have check-in nights at least once, often twice a month, where young folks can come and check in about whatever they need to. They can get support, they can get something off their chest, and get some feedback if they want it. We also do a lot of fun stuff with the young people. We do social events, so we'll get to know each other and we'll play games with each other. And then we also talk about important topics like body positivity or good self-care, stuff like that. And then we also have an adult support group, and it's run very similarly to the adult support group, but it's exclusively for people 18 and up. And finally, we have a leadership development program, and this is designed to elevate the personal and professional skills of our members. So basically, we know that there are probably a lot of people in our young members' lives who are telling them what to do, telling them, you know, you should do this, you should do that. And that's important sometimes, right? That's what adults are good for with young people. But at the same time, we want to make sure that these youth have a voice and that they have the space to, you know, say what they think is important and talk about what they want to do and what kind of services they want to see from us. So twice a week, our leadership team gets together, and it's a group of young people who say, hey, this is what we think is important. These are the kind of groups and services that we want to see. And then they lead those groups themselves. So it teaches them leadership and community building and, you know, confidence in public speaking, important skills like that. Next slide, please.
La próxima diapositivas.
Oh, yes. And then, of course, we do community education like this.
Y por
So
supuesto
we work
tenemos
with other
educación
organizations.
comunitaria
We go to
y
different schools. We do outreach
para
events
las
just
escuelas,
to help
para
our
los
community
eventos,
understand the
tener
LGBTQ
mesas con los
community a little
recursos
bit better so that we can
para
all
educar a la
coexist
comunidad,
together
la comunidad,
better and help
que
end
los estudiantes
discrimination
puedan
in
tener
Sonoma
un
County.
poquito más la comunidad LGBTQ. Eh,
A little bit more about our services and the awesome partnerships that we have. We do something called Queer Art Club, and we also have Self-Expression Camp. And this is a partnership with the Sonoma Community Center in the town of Sonoma. So Queer Art Club is for anyone ages 10 to 17, and it's every third Wednesday of the month. And then Self-Expression Camp is a summer day camp that we started last summer for LGBTQIA plus teens. We have a lot of really talented artists in our community, and it's a great way for young people to be able to express themselves and to meet other young people like them.
Que quieran expresar
We also partner with an organization called North Bay LGBTQI Families to do an event called Social Saturday. And this event is an intergenerational picnic in which people of all ages are welcome, and we gather outdoors to be both connected with nature around us and also to be COVID safe. And we just get to hang out with each other and build community. And we get to see people of all ages represented in our local LGBTQ community, which is really important. And this is every second Saturday of the month. We also partner with Trans Life, and Trans Life does an annual community conference and professional symposium. So it switches off each year. So one year they'll do a community conference where it is people within the LGBTQ community who come to this conference who can get resources and support and go to workshops and that kind of thing. And then the next year, it would be a professional symposium in which professionals from Sonoma County, whether they're lawyers or doctors or therapists or whoever, can come to this symposium and learn more about our community so that they can make sure that their services that they are providing are culturally competent and respectful of us. And then we also partner with some local groups who do support. So groups like PFLAG, TGNB, and FTM Sonoma County. And these are different groups who have, different missions, but are similar. So PFLAG serves loved ones of LGBTQ people. So if you are a family member or a friend of someone who is LGBTQ, then you can come to this group and get support around that and learn how to support your loved one. TGNB stands for Transgender North Bay, and it's specifically for trans women and trans feminine people. And then FTM Sonoma County is a support group for trans men and trans masculine people. So we let these groups use our community center and or our Zoom for their meetings. So these are some of the partnerships that we have. So we wanted to let you know that we actually have a social Saturday coming up this Saturday, and we would really love for you to be there if you are interested. So it is this Saturday, March 12th from 11 to 2, and it's in Cloverdale at Cloverdale City Park. And we'll be making art, we'll be doing Zumba, and the Zumba will be both in Spanish and English, and it's free, it's all ages, it's just a nice event for people to get to know each other and hang out in community. So we would love for you to be there. Okay, so now we've told you a little bit about who Positive Images is. We
Ahora
want to tell you a little
era
bit,
imágenes
give you a brief
positivas,
introduction to
pero
the
ahora les voy a hablar un
LGBTQIA
poquito
plus community so that
sobre
you
la
have a little bit more
comunidad lesbiana,
information and
LGBT,
knowledge about who we are.
queer, intersexual y
So
así.
this acronym stands for lesbian, gay,
Entonces,
bisexual, transgender, queer,
LGBTQIA
questioning,
es
intersex, and
lesbiana,
asexual.
gay,
And
bisexual,
sometimes you'll see
transgénero,
different versions
queer,
of this acronym, right? Sometimes you'll see
intersex
LGBT,
y
sometimes
asexual.
you'll see LGBTQ. We like to try and use this long
A
acronym
veces
whenever we can,
trato de utilizar
just to be
todo el
more
acronismo, pero a
inclusive
veces se ve
and fit
LGBTQ,
as many people
pero
into this
queremos
acronym
incluir con
as we
este
can.
acronismo a
But
todas
the
las
plus
personas
on the end
posibles
is
con
to
todas sus
symbolize that we
juventud
could never
en el
fit
espectro.
everyone in our community into one acronym. We're a very
Y pues
diverse
también
community
entendemos que
with
no
lots of
vamos a
different
poder acomodar a
experiences
toda
and
la
lots of
comunidad
different
con este
labels.
acronismo,
So
porque
we
pues
really
son
can't
muchas
fit
las
everyone into just
inclusiones
one
y las
acronym.
intersecciones
And so the plus is
alrededor del
supposed to
género y
represent that
LGBTQ.
and aims to include everybody
Pero
else
tratamos de
that we
incluir
can't
a
fit
todo el
in this
mundo
acronym.
que está en el espectro a través de este acronismo.
Now we're going to mention an acronym that you probably haven't heard before,
Vamos ahora a
and this
hablar de un
acronym
acronismo
is
que
Soji.
probablemente
And
no
Soji stands for
escuchado.
sex assigned at birth,
Es
sexual
Soji,
orientation,
es
gender identity, and
SOGY
expression.
y es
Sometimes when we talk
significa
about LGBTQ issues, people will
sexo
say,
asignado
well,
al
I don't know, I can't
nacimiento,
really relate to it because
sexual
I'm not a
y
part of that
orientación
community,
sexual,
you know?
identidad de género
And
y
so, some people in this
algunas de
room
las
are part of the
personas en
LGBTQIA plus
este
community.
mundo
There's at least me, there
son
might be
parte de
other
la comunidad
folks, but everybody
LGBTQIA,
in this room
pero
has a
también hay
Soji,
otros que son
regardless of
parte
who you are or how you
de la
identify.
comunidad
We
Soji.
all have a
Todos
sex that we
somos
were assigned at
la
birth,
comunidad
a
Soji porque tenemos un
sexuality, a
sexo
gender, and a
asignado
way
al
that we
nacimiento,
express
tenemos una
that
orientación
gender.
sexual, tenemos una
So we like to
identidad
frame
y
things in the way of Soji to make it more understandable and relatable to everyone.
¿Cómo podemos hablar en términos de Soji para hacerlo más entendible, incluir a todo el mundo? Todo el mundo tiene Soji. Entonces vamos a hablar de sexo
So let's talk about sex versus gender.
versus
So
género.
when I say sex, I mean someone's biological sex
Esta
characteristics
es
that
la
include
característica
your
sexual
physical
de
anatomy, things like your
las
reproductive
características
organs,
biológicas
your
del nacimiento de
hormones,
alguien.
your chromosomes,
Eso
any of that
incluye
physical
la anatomía
biological stuff.
física, los órganos
And doctors will
reproductivos,
assign a
las
sex
hormonas,
to a
los
fetus or a
cromosomas,
baby
etcétera.
based on some of
Los
these
doctores pueden
characteristics.
asignar el sexo
But
al
when we say
nacimiento
gender or
a
gender
un
identity,
feto
that means
antes
someone's
de nacer
internal
también
perception of their
basado
gender.
en las características
Excuse me, your
fisiológicas.
experience with your gender and what that means to you, regardless of what your biological sex is.
Ahora, la identidad de género
And then when we
es
say
su
gender
orientación
expression,
sexual
we mean
de
someone's
género
external
a
display
través
of
de su
gender,
experiencia.
how they dress, their
Entonces,
behavior, their
forma
mannerisms, that
internamente
kind of
como
thing.
uno se percibe
And one of the
internamente
most important
con
concepts
respecto
that
a
I want to
género
make clear to you
es
all
tu
today is
experiencia
that
con
sex and gender are
género
not the same thing.
y lo que significa.
And that can be really hard for us to wrap our heads around sometimes because we're taught for our whole lives that they are the same thing, but they're not. They're
Es un
different.
poco difícil de entender porque toda nuestra
So
vida nos han
this
dicho
next
que una cosa
slide
es y
shows
como
us
no
a
es.
really cute and helpful graphic
Y acá nos están
that helps us
mostrando
understand all of these different parts.
expresión de género es como tú
So this is the
comprendes
gender
a
unicorn.
través de tu
And this isn't a
sexual,
graphic that I made. So if you ever want to look back at this,
se llama el
just
unicornio
Google the
alegre.
gender unicorn and you should be
Si
able to
usted
find it.
quiere volver a recordar esto,
So let's break this down.
siempre puede buscar en el
We can
Google
see that the
el
gender
unicornio
unicorn
de
is
género.
thinking about its gender identity because, as we
Unicornio
just
está
talked
pensando
about,
de
gender
su
is in our
expresión
head.
de
It's
género.
who we know we are in our brain.
Es
So
como
maybe the
saber
gender
lo
unicorn
que
is
somos
female,
nuestro cerebro.
maybe it's male, maybe it's
Tal
something
vez el
else,
unicornio
and we'll get to
es
what the something else means in
masculino,
just a
es
second.
hombre, es mujer, es algo más.
Then the sex assigned at birth is
La
represented
identidad
by this DNA strand here. And maybe the unicorn was
ser
assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth, or something else. And then these hearts represent who the unicorn is physically and emotionally attracted to. And this green dotted line encompassing all of the unicorn is its gender expression. So maybe it likes to be more feminine. Maybe it likes to be more masculine, maybe more androgynous or something else. So all of these different parts, they're going to interact with each other. And for some people, they're going to be the same, but they are separate categories. And that's the important takeaway here. Something that I like to say to help clear up the difference between gender and sexuality is gender is who you are and sexuality is who you love. I know this is a lot of information, so I just wanted to quickly open it up and see if there are any questions so far.
Y sexualidad es como tú quieres expresar ese género. El sexo asignado al nacimiento es femenino, masculino o otro intersexo.
Okay, well, we will also have time for questions at the end. Let's go to the next slide, please.
¿Tienen preguntas? Yo también puedo traducir.
So we've got a few more labels, some more terms regarding gender and sex here. So this first term, cisgender or cis, means that someone's gender matches the sex that they were assigned at birth. So to give an example, let's say a baby girl is born and the doctor says, congratulations, it's a beautiful baby girl. If that baby girl grows up and she says, yeah, I'm a girl, I'm a woman, that makes sense, that feels right, then her gender and who she knows she is matches the sex that she was assigned at birth, which means that she is cisgender or cis. But if someone's gender does not match the sex that they were assigned at birth, that means they are transgender or trans. I can use myself as an example here since I'm trans. I was assigned female at birth, but I don't feel like a woman. That doesn't feel right for me. And so my gender does not match the sex that I was assigned at birth, which is what makes me trans. So we've got a few different labels here that people might use to describe themselves, such as trans woman, trans feminine. This acronym here, AMAB, stands for assigned male at birth. We've got trans man, trans masculine, and AFAB, which means assigned female at birth. And then we also have non-binary genders. So people who are agender, gender queer, gender fluid, and we'll get more into what all that means in just a second. Now, sometimes people can get a little confused. They're like, if someone is a trans man, does that mean they're a man or a woman? I don't understand. So just to clarify, trans is just like a describing word, right? So a trans man is a man. You could take the trans right off there. But the word trans just describes his journey and how he got there, how he became a man, right? Same thing for a trans woman. A trans woman is a woman who just came to her womanhood by the trans experience. It's also really important to remember that we shouldn't assign any of these labels to people unless they've done so for themselves first. We can't just look at someone and know who they are or how they identify or what language they're comfortable with. So we need to listen to people and how they describe themselves and then use that language accordingly. And this down here is the transgender flag, which is why we have that on this slide.
NonBinario género, que es sin género, no queer, transgénero, que significa.
So let's talk about what a binary is.
¿Qué es
A
un
binary is something that is
binario? Es algo
composed of two
que
parts.
está compuesto de dos
And
partes.
in our society, we usually view them as like polar opposites, totally
En la
different.
sociedad,
So
a veces
black
lo
versus
vemos
white, gay
totalmente
versus straight,
opuesto,
male
o
versus female. We have
por
two
ejemplo,
options and we
blanco,
see them as like totally opposite ends of the spectrum.
gay, derecho,
But when we look at the
masculino,
world in such a
femenino,
binary way of this versus that, we leave a lot of people out. We leave
cuando
out
tenemos esta
non-binary
clase
people as well
de,
as
de
intersex people.
regla, de
Next
pensamiento
slide, please.
binario, pues dejamos a mucha gente que está en la mitad por fuera.
So let's talk about non-binary
Hablemos de
identities and
las
what it means
identidades
to be
no
non-binary.
binarias, que
So if
son
someone is
como
non-binary, that
género
means that their
queer,
gender
género,
falls
o
outside of the gender binary.
inclusive
So they don't strictly
no
fit in the male or
monogamy,
female boxes.
no caen en las categorías de
So I
mujer,
myself
hombre,
identify as
mujer,
non-binary.
hombre,
As I
mujer,
said,
femenino.
I was assigned female at birth, but I don't
Por ejemplo,
identify as female,
yo,
but I also don't feel
yo puedo
male
ser
either. And so
assigned,
non-binary
asignada
is what feels right to me.
femenina al nacimiento, pero no me identifico como
There are a lot of different
me siento
labels that
como
people are coming up with to help
hombre.
describe their experience with
Hay
gender, which
muchas
is great.
formas y
But we've got just a couple here on the screen for you.
terminología para
So
poder
this one right
ayudar
here,
a que la
gender
gente se
fluid,
sienta
means
con
that
su identidad
someone's gender
sexual.
changes and fluctuates. It's fluid like water.
Por ejemplo, fluidez
So
de género.
it's going to be different
El
for
género
everyone, of
cambia
course, but as an
y
example,
fluctúa
someone might
dependiendo de
wake
cómo
up
uno
one
se sienta.
day and feel more male
Ya
or
yo
more
me puedo sentir
masculine.
más masculino
And then
y
maybe
otro
a
día
few
me
days
puedo
later, they
sentir
wake up and they feel more feminine or female. And then a few days after that, they wake up and
después
they
otro día
feel
más tarde
more
se-
non-binary,
y
something
otra vez
else,
se
right?
siente que ni es femenino ni es
This
masculino.
term down here, two-spirit, is really important
Este
to
término
note
de,
for a few different
de
reasons.
de
So
dos
sometimes when we're
identidades
talking about
se
non-binary
utiliza
stuff,
en la cultura
people will
nativoamericana.
say things like, I think this is all
Y
made
esos
up. This is a bunch
pertenecen a
of
las
new
personas
stuff.
que se
This is
identifican
just because of the internet. And that's actually not true.
masculino y femenino.
We have records
Y el
of
espíritu
people living
es
outside of the binary for a really long time, as long as people have existed throughout history. And a really good example of that is in Native American communities. There are people who identify as
Entonces,
two-spirit,
este
who
género
feel that they
se
have
utiliza
both
para los
masculine
grupos
and feminine
afroamericanos o
spirits
indígenas.
in the same body.
Y
And
habla de dos
this has been going on in
calificación
indigenous
de
communities
dos
for
espíritus.
forever, for a really long
Solamente
time.
se utiliza
So it's
en
not
las
that
comunidades
being
que
non-binary
son
is something
nativas
that's
o
new.
indígenas, se ven
It's more
apropiados
that it's new to most of
que,
us.
que tú eres
Because
no nativo, no
in the
indígena,
case of
y
two-spirit people
utilizaras
or
teoría
people who lived outside of the
ya se
binary
puede
in
también
indigenous
utilizar
communities,
eh,
that was really squashed by
en
colonization,
la
right?
comunidad indígena.
So it's not that this is new, it's that it's been really
Algo que no es
suppressed.
nuevo, sino que se
It's also
hizo
really
en
important to
comunidades
note that this label
indígenas,
is exclusive to
pero
indigenous
es algo
communities,
que en la
so
comunidad
it's inappropriate
latinoamericana
for
es
non-native
cultural
people to
y es
use
parte
this
de la
term.
identidad de una persona indígena. También está el no conformismo con género, que depende de cómo uno se sienta y
Could you click again,
que
please?
tiene que encajar en femenino, masculino o
Thank you.
transgénero.
So let's talk about language. So pronouns are when someone is referred to in the third person and we
Los
don't use
pronombres
their
es
name.
cuando alguien se refiere
In some languages, third person pronouns are gendered.
para
In some
dar
languages,
una
they're not,
claridad
but in a lot of
acerca
languages, they
de
are.
esa persona.
So in
algunos
English,
idiomas
the traditional pronouns would
se
be he,
utiliza
him, and she, her.
tercera persona
And
para
in
hablar
Spanish,
de
the
una
traditional
persona
pronouns would be él and ella.
y
But
en
some
inglés se utilizan los
people,
pronombres
they
de
don't really fit with those
pero en
pronouns.
español
Those
sería
pronouns
ella,
don't feel
ellos.
right.
Pero hay
And
gente
so they
que
might go
considera
for an
así,
option
eso
that is more gender
no se
neutral.
identifica,
So in English,
quieren utilizar
people often use they, them pronouns
ellos,
when they
ellas,
don't
se
feel like he,
refiere a
him, or
persona
she, her
él,
fits for
ellos.
them. So someone like me, I
ella
use they, them
se
pronouns.
considera masculina y en inglés se
And then
puede
in
usar
Spanish,
ella
people
cuando
have been
no
creating
no
language
está en la categoría
that can be more gender
secundaria,
neutral
sino
since Spanish is very gendered.
en
So
español,
originally,
ella es
some
más
people came up with
orientado
AX,
hacia el
so they would
ella.
put an X at the end,
Tenemos
similar
palabras
to how,
masculinas y femeninas.
we
Letras
would
masculinas
sometimes
y
say like the Latinx
femeninas. A
community
veces
instead of Latino
se
or
utiliza
Latina.
ella, estéreo,
But
ellos,
then recently, a lot of people have been
y
saying,
también se utiliza la
hey, that
palabra
actually
ella
doesn't make any
porque
sense for Spanish to have an X in there. And so
entonces
now a more
también
common
no
suggestion
tiene
is to use
acento,
AA, so
pero
to put
también
an
se
E at
utiliza
the end,
ella con acento.
which is why in my pronouns that I've put in my Zoom name here, I put
En el,
they, them,
en el
AA.
en los pronombres
There are
que
also
ellos
what we
están
call
utilizando,
neo pronouns,
utilizan
and these still aren't
ellos,
used quite as
ellos,
often as other pronouns,
hay otros
but more and more
pronombres
people are
nuevos
starting to use
que se
them.
llaman
And it's language that people have created when they feel like he, she, or they doesn't really fit them.
porque she, he,
So
o
the
they,
examples that we
no
have
les,
down
no
here
les,
are things like
no
Z
les
here or
resuena.
AM. So
Say
again,
here,
not seeing these
say
used quite
she,
as much as other pronouns, but
theirs.
important to know about.
Pero es muy importante saber de los pronombres. Lenguaje inclusivo y por qué los nombres.
One more click, please. Thank you. All right. So why are names and pronouns so important in the first place? Well, it's about respecting and validating a really core part of someone's identity. It's not a choice. It's not a joke. It's a really integral part of who that person is. And also, pronouns aren't preferred. They just are. Sometimes people will say, what are your preferred pronouns? But pronouns aren't a preference. They're mandatory. So we take issue with that language sometimes. So how can you be supportive of someone's identity and their pronouns? Well, first of all, if someone tells you their name and pronouns, use them. It sounds really simple, but it's really important. And sometimes people struggle a lot with it. So do your best to get it right. And share your own pronouns and ask for other people's pronouns when you meet them. So for example, you can say, hi, my name is Joy. I use they, them pronouns. What about you? And sometimes people feel really nervous about this, right? They're worried that asking for someone's pronouns is rude. But actually, on the contrary, many of us really appreciate it when you ask for our pronouns because that shows that you want to get it right. So it's okay to ask for someone's pronouns. And consider adding your pronouns everywhere you're comfortable. So to your email signature, in your social media bios, in your Zoom name, like many people have already done in this meeting, which is awesome, because that makes it normalized and it makes trans people feel a lot safer in sharing their pronouns.
Cuando usted los conozca o los o introduzca, es importante decir, hola, mi nombre es Ana y yo uso ella.
So let's do a little bit of practice with pronouns in case you're having a hard time with this. So this person right here is Zach. He uses he, him pronouns. So we would say, he is really cool. I like him a lot. That backpack is his. For someone like Maggie, who uses she, her pronouns, we say, she is really cool. I like her a lot. That backpack is hers. And then for someone like me, who uses they, them pronouns, we would say, excuse me, they are really cool. I like them a lot. That backpack is theirs. Now let's go over what to do if you accidentally misgender somebody. First off, misgendering is when you use the wrong pronoun name, or
Eh,
label for a
Cuando
trans or
pasa eso, cuando
non-binary person.
utilizo el
So if
rótulo
somebody
equivocado,
accidentally said she or he for me instead of they, right?
o el nombre equivocado.
First of all, we want to say
Una
it's
persona
okay to
sea
make
trans
mistakes.
o
Nobody is
non-binary o lo que
perfect, and we're all going to mess up
no,
sometimes.
no todos somos
If you do
perfectos
mess up,
y se
you
puede
might feel
hacer,
bad,
pero
but
si
try not to make it a big
cometes un
deal,
error, trata
um,
de no
because
hacer
that's just
gran
uncomfortable for everybody involved.
drama.
So just correct
Esto va
yourself
a basar
and move
solamente
on.
simplemente
Use the
corrige
correct pronoun
tus
or name
palabras
as soon as possible.
y
And later you can
lo
thank
más
that
pronto
person for
posible y
helping you to get it
después,
right.
si quiere
What
directamente
really
o
matters is that
privadamente,
you are
puede
making an
decirle a la
effort,
persona
because we can
que
tell the
te
difference
sientes
when someone
identificado.
is trying but just
Pero
messing up
lo
sometimes
más importante es
versus
que
when someone isn't
las
really
personas
trying at all.
están tratando de ser adecuadas y tienen buenas intenciones. Es importante también que corrijas utilizando el pronombre.
A little more about inclusive language.
Un poquito
Our
más
language can be
acerca de
really
nuestro
gendered,
lenguaje
and that can
inclusivo.
make people feel really
La
uncomfortable
lengua
or like they're not welcome.
inclusiva
So
liberal
instead of
comunitaria
saying boys and
ayuda
girls,
a que la
you
gente
can
se
say
sienta
kids,
bienvenida, se siente
children,
incluida y se
youth, young
siente
people.
afirmada.
Instead of ladies and gentlemen, you can say
Por ejemplo,
folks
en
or
vez de decir
y'all,
niños y niñas,
guests,
¿por
friends,
qué no
something
tratamos
like
de
that.
usar
And then instead of boyfriend, girlfriend, or husband,
jóvenes,
wife, you can say partner
todo el
or
mundo,
spouse or significant
personas,
other. And it might not seem
para
like
ladies
a
and
big deal
gentlemen,
to
señoras
you,
y
but
señores,
it can really make a
podemos
big
usar
difference in making
personas,
everyone feel welcome
gente,
and included.
amigos, todos ustedes, para novia y novio, el partner significa other, la media naranja.
We also want to make it clear that the
También queremos
impact of
aclarar
acceptance makes a really big difference on
que la
LGBTQ people's
aceptación
lives.
tiene un gran
So
impacto
LGBTQ
y hace una
young
gran
people
diferencia.
who have families who show
LGBTQ
rejecting
y
behaviors,
los jóvenes y las
excluding
familias
them, shaming them, misgendering them,
que rechazan
they
las
experience higher rates of depression,
a
suicidal
través de
thoughts,
palabras, de
suicide
comportamientos,
attempts, and illegal drug
de
use.
juzgar, de echar
But for
culpas,
LGBTQ youth with families who show accepting
de
behaviors,
hacerlos sentir
who
culpables,
receive
separados,
affection, support,
estos
and
jóvenes
advocacy,
experimentan
they have lower rates of
depresión más
depression,
alta,
suicidal thoughts, and
tasas más
attempts,
grandes de depresión,
drug use, and they have better health
suicidas,
outcomes, higher
pensamientos
self-esteem,
negativos
and stronger
y
family
pueden llegar
relationships.
a tentar a dañarse y a
Using the correct names and pronouns
utilizar
reduces
pronombres
risk of
y
depression and suicide attempts in trans people.
La
So
comunidad LGBTQ, los
71%
jóvenes
reported lessened
con familias
symptoms of severe
que
depression.
muestran la aceptación de su
34%
identidad,
reported lessened thoughts of suicide.
comportamientos
And we see a
con cariño,
65%
con
reduction in
comprensión, con
suicide
apoyo, con
attempts.
advocacia.
So just by
También
being
está
supportive
demostrado que se
of
muestran
your
bajas
LGBTQ loved one, by
tasas de
using their
depresión,
name and
de
using their
pensamientos
pronouns
suicidas,
correctly, you
de
can
uso
make a
ilegal de
huge
drogas y de
difference in their mental
sustancias,
health
también
and
más
safety.
saludables se ven y con una autoestima más alta y con de habilidades sociales y de relacionarse con la comunidad más fácilmente.
So here are some tips on how to be an
Hay
ally to the
algunos,
LGBTQIA
ideas
plus
para
community.
cómo ser un aliado de la comunidad
An ally is
LGBTQ+.
someone who isn't a part of our
Aliado es
community,
alguien que
but
no
who
es
still
parte de la
wants to
comunidad,
support our
pero
equal
que
rights,
si quiere
our
apoyar
movements, and who
los
challenges
derechos
homophobia
iguales
and
de igualdad de
transphobia
género,
whenever they can.
igualdad de
Allies are some of the most effective
beneficios,
and
de
powerful
capacidades
voices
y
in our
participan en
movement.
los
So
movimientos
it's really
sociales,
important that you use your
es
privilege.
simpático
Basically, what
a
this
las
means is
comunidades,
if an
no
LGBTQ
tolera la
person is being
homofobia,
discriminated
la
against,
bifobia o la transfobia.
you as an ally have a
Usted
lot
como
of power
aliado
in being
tiene
able
mucho
to
poder
put that
de
to a stop
influenciar y de
or in supporting that
sentar un
person.
precedente para que la comunidad
By
sea
having an
poderosa
equality sign in your office, like we have here on the screen, or having some rainbow stuff at home, having some flags around. This is a really cute and easy way to show LGBTQ people that you are an ally and that you're a safe person to talk to.
Podemos apoyar, usar
LGBTQIA plus youth report that the number one factor preventing suicide is connection to a caring and supportive adult or peer. And that person could be you. And you don't have to be an expert to be an ally. You don't have to understand everything in our community. You just need to be kind and do your best to support someone.
A través de ser aliados podemos prevenir.
So these slides are just some local resources for you to know about. So this first point is positive images, us, our information, our website and phone number. This support group is for trans Latinas, which is really awesome. That's good to know about. For our elders, there is Aging Gayfully and Sonoma Valley LGBTQ Seniors. LGBTQ Connection is an organization pretty similar to Positive Images, and they're a good resource to know about. They also have a good amount of resources in Spanish. The Santa Rosa Community Health Gender Clinic is a really good resource for people who are exploring their gender and need medical support with that. And they are really accessible. They take sliding scale, lots of different insurances. And face-to-face does STI and HIV prevention and needle exchange as well.
Una organización sin ánimo de lucro.
Then on the national side of resources, there are a lot of hotlines out there, similar to like a suicide hotline, where if someone is struggling, they can call and get support. So this first one, Trans Lifeline, is by and for trans people, and is a really good resource for the trans community. The Trevor Project is really similar, but it's not exclusive to the trans community, it's to the whole LGBTQ community. Gender Spectrum is an awesome organization run out of Oakland, and their website has a lot of information about gender. So if you're still trying to understand things, they're a good resource. And they also have support groups for parents. So if you are the parent of an LGBTQ child, you can join their support groups. So I think that's just about it. That's all I have to share with you today. So I know that was a lot of information. And if anyone has any questions, I would love to do my best to answer them.
Esto es lo que tengo yo por el momento. Ahora vamos a pasar a hacer preguntas. Si alguien tiene preguntas, con mucho gusto estaré acá para contestar.
Any questions?
¿Alguna pregunta?
Okay, well, we at Positive Images want you to know that we are here to support you. So whether it's for yourself or for a loved one, we want to support you in any way that we can. So you can always call us, you can email us, or you can come into our community center in downtown Santa Rosa, and we would love to meet you.
Relacionarse con nosotros en nuestros espacios comunes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Joy, for coming and presenting to all of us. We're very grateful as well. I'm very grateful, me personally, that you came. So yeah, that's pretty much it for our presentation. Before everybody leaves, I will be having a raffle, but I do want to open up again if there's any other questions in the chat, any comments.
Pregunta, que por favor nos avise.